I'm going to go ahead and guess that you've gone through a process similar to what I went through when you were planning your wedding invitations. You scroll Pinterest, you're obsessed with the wax seals, the monograms, the custom stamp designs. Then you go straight to Google. You realized all that stuff wasn't exactly in the budget, and then you thought, virtual invites, eco-friendly, automates tracking, still cute, less pricey. And now here you are. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to discuss your options in terms of digital platforms. Review the pros, the cons. Next, I'll tell you which one of those I personally chose for our wedding and why. And then we're going to discuss everything you need to do before you begin designing your invitations, that is, drafting the content that needs to go on them. And that'll bring us to a step-by-step tutorial on how exactly I put together our save the date cards and our formal invitations. I'll also show you what it looks like when a guest interacts with the invite so you can really get a preview of what it'll be like when you send out your own. Before all that though, we really need to have a quick chat about wedding websites. They're super trendy right now, but let me tell you why it's not an essential. Most of the information couples put on a wedding website can actually be included in a digital invite. The date, the venue, how to RSVP, registry links, it can go all on there in one place. A lot of couples will add pages like our story, how we met, but honestly, most of your friends and family already know these things, and if they don't, it's also not a big deal. Second point, even if you spend hours writing up cute bios, detailed weekend itineraries, most people aren't going to read it. They're looking for two things. Where's the event? What time should I be there? That's it. Third, designing a wedding website takes time. Picking a template, customizing it, writing the content, making sure it looks good. Also, most platforms will charge you money to do this, or for the premium features. Don't need to be spending that money. Fourth, most wedding website platforms don't offer fully integrated digital invites, so that means you're using one tool to build the site, another one to send the invite to track RSVPs. You're left trying to make them communicate with one another. It can get messy. Save yourself the headache. And last but not least, not having a wedding website simplifies the guest experience, especially for the older relatives who might not be super tech savvy. Fewer links means fewer confusion. So in short, if you design your virtual invites well, you do not need a website. So that being said, let's get started with creating your invites. You've got many digital platform options. First up, Withjoy. While it seems to have decent reviews at the get-go when you make a quick Google search, a deep dive on Reddit reveals major issues, especially with the registry. Items will often show higher pricing, the listings are apparently disorganized, the interface can be glitchy. Users also report problems with shipping fees, even editing invites. Also, even though it's marketed as free, customization will usually come with hidden fees. And overall, our good friends on Reddit seem to say that the site's design and RSVP features can be clunky, frustrating to use, and makes the whole experience pretty annoying. Next, we've got Zola. Zola comes up when you search digital wedding invites, but the reality of the fact is that they don't actually offer digital invitations. People seem to be customizing their digital save the date cards to create formal invitations through the platform, but they're not really designed to have real formal invite templates. You can RSVP through the save the date template, but I just find it odd, and I personally feel more trusting towards a platform that's actually designed for real digital invites. I feel like it's a bit more organized in terms of having options for how to ask your questions. I just don't trust it. Similar deal with Minted. They have save the dates. They don't have real formal invites. A lot of people, again, in these situations are either customizing the save the date cards to look like formal invites, or they're using Minted for save the dates and another website for formal invites and then linking them to Minted so that they can RSVP that way. But again, I feel like that's risky. I don't want to confuse guests. I don't want to have to deal with communication issues between the different platforms. So that brings us to, in my humble opinion, the two top dogs, Greenvelope and Paperless Post. Both of these platforms offer digital save the date cards and digital formal invitations. Both have templates that you can customize. I will cut straight to the chase. I think Paperless Post is superior, and I'll tell you why. Number one, and this is totally subjective, I think the template designs on Paperless Post are nicer. They're just classier, more luxurious looking, overall better. Second, pricing. Greenvelope charges a straightforward, flat fee. You either pay per invite or choose an unlimited spending package. The cost stays the same regardless of customization, but Paperless Post is different. You pay using coins, which you have to purchase, and the number of coins you need for your different invites will depend on the template that you use, the features, the number of invites that you have to send. Yes, it's slightly confusing, but it offers the potential for flexibility. If you're on a tighter budget, you can stick to free options, you can make minimal customizations, you can literally have a free card. You don't have to add anything to it and then it costs you nothing. If you have a smaller budget and you want to just add a few little customizations, you can do that. With a larger budget, you can splurge on premium designs, customize your heart out. I like that flexibility. You can adjust based on what your budget can handle. I used Paperless Post for our wedding. It went super well. And so you're going to trust me, I think, here. You've chosen your platform, Paperless Post. It's time to draft the content. Now, having a draft of the content that's going to be included before you get started on designing the invites is super helpful for the design process. It'll make it easier to determine positioning details on the card and font sizes you want to use when you know how much information actually has to fit on that card. So starting with the save the date card, go ahead and take a screenshot of this if you want. It can be helpful when you're preparing this information. But here's a little list of what you should include. You and your partner's name, a prompt asking guests to save the date to celebrate your wedding, the date of the event, the location, a note about whether or not it's child-free. It's nice to give this in advance just so that people can make arrangements. And then any accommodation information if it's applicable. So if you're getting married at a hotel and a block of rooms is reserved at a reduced price, you can include that here so they can book in advance. And lastly, a note that a formal invite will follow. Optionally, you can add a little phrase letting your guests know, hey, I look forward to celebrating this special day with you. Formal invitation has a bit more specific information, so you'll want to include, again, you and your partner's name, a note indicating that the guest is invited to celebrate your wedding, the date and time of the event, the location with the specific address, the specific location of the ceremony and the reception, a note about whether or not, again, it's a child-free wedding, a deadline for when they should confirm their attendance, and then optionally, you can add a phrase about a dress code if you have one, and a link to a registry, again, if you have one. The invitation itself will also include a prompt asking guests to select their meal preferences and to identify food allergies or intolerances. In Paperless Post, though, this is separate from the actual card. It'll pop up as a question once they confirm their attendance. But based on that, again, draft out these 2 questions as full sentences. They'll be separate from the invitation card, but it'll be practical to have them drafted out ahead of time. But the questions being separate is kind of nice because it helps you avoid cluttering up the card with a ton of information. But again, just add that to your list of stuff to prep in advance. All right, now it's time to roll up our sleeves and do the damn thing. First step, signing up to Paperless Post. So you'll want to navigate to the Paperless Post website and select Sign Up. So complicated, I know. You can sign up with Google, Facebook, or through Apple. Second step, explore the different templates. If you go to the wedding tab, you can select both save the date and wedding invitations, and you can really scroll through all of the different templates they have. You can filter for the different kind of style that you have. So for example, if you're more elegant or modern or boho, go with the vibe that you have in mind for your wedding, of course. You can also indicate whether or not you want to include photos of your fiance and yourself, or if you don't want to include any photos at all. And you can also go through different themes. So if you want something more floral or something with more greenery, you can filter for that. And you can go ahead and select whether or not you're looking for a free card or a card that has premium assets included into it. Be sure to check out the different envelopes as well. You can see some of the designs have really beautiful envelopes, and you can also go ahead and click preview to see sort of what the guest will see if you do choose to go for a certain template. The next thing you're going to want to do is pre-select both your save the date card and formal wedding invitation templates. And I say this because you're not going to use the same card for the save the date and for the formal invite, but you want them to have some flow. You kind of want them to lightly match a little bit just to have a similar vibe, because that's going to be what's representing at your wedding, and it kind of gives your guests a sense of or a feel for what to expect for the vibe from your wedding. So I think it's best to choose these two in advance, especially if you're into kind of the more colorful cards or something with more florals, just to make sure that Paperless Post has options for two different cards that are going to flow well together in your unique style. Just having these in advance ensures that you're not going to design a whole save the date card just to later realize that there's no formal invite that matches well with it. So as an example here, we have the save the date card that we chose for a wedding and the formal invite. So you can see they're not exactly the same, but there is a certain flow. There's sort of that elegant, vintagey vibe going with gold lettering throughout. All right, so now it's time to customize your selected template, and you'll see it's super simple and straightforward with Paperless Post. So you'll click on Customize. And in order to adjust font, you just have to double click on the text box, and then you can change the text size, the letter spacing, the line height between the different phrases of text. Really, really simple. And play around with this just to see how it changes your design. You can also change the alignment, the letter casing, and to the left you can see you can change font and text color. Now what I like to do at the beginning is just type in all the text that needs to be included on the card, just to make sure that the information is all on there, and afterwards you can just focus on playing around with fonts, playing around with spacing. But once you have all the text that needs to go on there, you're sure that you aren't going to design a whole card and then realize, oh no, I forgot to add 2 lines of text, and now it squishes everything together and it doesn't look nice anymore. So just having all the information there from the get-go makes the creative piece, the designing piece, a little bit more fun, a little bit less stressful. I'm playing around with the font here, right, just for the first row, because I feel like the font used in this card here is a little bit hard to read, so just adjusting that right away so that I can actually see the information that I'm writing a bit more clearly. A little tip though here, as you can see, different fonts may have a drop-down menu which will allow you to adjust the font ever so slightly, making it either a little bit more bold, a little more italic, a little thinner looking, so be sure to explore those options as well when you're making your designs. Now to add another text box, I just hold down on this current box that I have here and duplicate it so that I can maintain the font size and the font. If you add a fresh new text box, it'll reset to a different font and a different size, so it's just annoying. Much easier if you just duplicate an existing text box that has your selected font and size. You're going to want to go ahead and, as I mentioned, add in all the text that you drafted beforehand. Once you have all your text in there, it's time to start messing around with the positioning and the placement of the text. I've left in the video my full kind of toying around with the information to kind of let you see what the process looks like for me. But if you want, you can just skip through this part, but I think sometimes it's helpful to see sort of the process to the end result. At this point, the black envelope was kind of bugging me, so if you want to also change the color of your envelope, you just have to go ahead and click on it and you'll have your different options there. And if you want to go back to playing around with the text, which is what I do here, you can just click back on the save the date card, the invitation, and it'll bring you right back to it. All right, once you're happy with your final result, go ahead and click save and next. And this will bring you to your event page. So this is a page that'll show up at the bottom of your card when your guests open it. So it just has a little bit of extra information. So you can go ahead and add the event title, the name of the hosts, as well as the date and time using their calendar function. I recommend always putting a time that is 30 minutes earlier than the start of your ceremony, just to make sure you don't have any lates. So if your ceremony starts at 3:30, put 3 p.m. You can also add questions to the different invites through Paperless Post. Since it's a save the date card though, we don't have to add any questions. You do want to, however, add a location. You can either type one straight in, or you can look one up with their map feature. And again, ensure that the card is set to the save the date. Now, once you're finished with your card, you can go ahead and add guests. Really simple. You just add in the recipient's full name and their email address. So here I'm making up an email address. As you can see, I'm a Gilmore Girls kind of gal. And then you add recipient, and there they are. You can also add a couple if you only want one invite to be sent per couple. So you'll put the couple name right at the top and then the recipient information. For our wedding, I only added one email or phone number per guest when it was kind of a couple. So, I mean, per couple. So only one person received it, just to ensure that there wasn't any confusion. So let's say here for the Lane and Zach couple, I only put in Lane's email address, so only Lane receives the invite on behalf of the couple. And that worked really well for us. When you're ready, you can go ahead and send the 2 invitations, the button right at the top there. And oh yeah, before doing that, preview your card. I recommend also emailing it to yourself just to see the full experience of what the guest is going to see. Really helpful. And you can see right there, the little menu you just filled out pops up to kind of encourage the guest to scroll down. And yes, once you're ready, send the 2 invitations along. And that's it. It's super simple. And this is what it'll look like once you send the card. This is from our actual wedding save the date card. And you can see who opened it and who didn't open it, which is really nice because we had a few guests that didn't know to check their email. A few older guests didn't know to check their email for an invite. So we were able to flag that to them and ensure that they opened it up on time. And you can also send direct messages to people through the chat function that you can see here. And if you do want to add an extra guest to a couple, you can do that easily. Okay, now we're hopping right into our formal card. The editing is going to go a little bit quicker here because you've seen it with the save the date card. It's really simple, really straightforward. So just like last time here, I'm adding in all the information, all the text that needs to go on the card to make the design piece a little bit easier there at the end. Now, just like last time, I'm going to leave this piece in, basically me playing around with the fonts, the spacing, the sizing. Again, just for those of you that like to see the creative process and like to get different ideas that way. But again, feel free to skip through this part if you feel like you're ready to do it without some inspo. When you're ready, go ahead and save up your card, and right away you'll be prompted to fill out the same event menu that you filled out the last time, so you can just go ahead and fill out that information. Be sure to double check the information you're adding here against the save the date card information before you send it out, just to make sure you're using the same terminology, that there's consistency between them, and that you're not accidentally sending out the wrong information to your guests. Little difference though between my fake save the date and this one. There's a real stars hollow. We're putting it in, okay, just for funsies. Since you are working with a formal wedding invitation here, you are going to want to tick the collect RSVPs button and set an RSVP deadline. I set mine a month before the event. You might want to ask your planner or your venue what they might recommend for this. And then you can decide whether or not you want the guest list to be visible to all the guests. I chose against that. And then adding questions. This is super important because at this stage, you're going to be collecting meal preferences. Now, if you pay for premium with Paperless Post, you can add checkboxes and multiple choice questions. But you know what? You don't really need to do that. Just use the short answer function and type in your question. Please identify which meal you would prefer, okay? Give the different options and people can answer with the short answer. Now, of course, if you're planning a wedding for like a ton of people, it might be worth it to invest in premium just so that you can, collect the responses a little easier that way. But with the short answer, you can export the responses received by your guests into a sheet. It's not going to be that complicated to have it in short answer, okay? Second short answer question that you want to include is asking anyone to identify their allergies or intolerances. Okay, really important. Once you have all those ticked off, go ahead and save. And then give it a little preview if you would like. Gorgeous. And now here's what it'll look like when a guest interacts with it. When they click will attend, okay, there you go, confirming will attend. That's when they're prompted to answer the questions. So it's very, very user-friendly, very simple. We had no issues with our guests in terms of answering these questions. When you're ready, go ahead and add your guests. Now, if you want, you can add the contacts that you already added in manually from the save the date function. So if you just click add contacts, every single person that you've ever added in your Paperless Post account will show up there, and you just have to tick them off like boxes. I'm not showing you mine because it's our real guests from our invite and I want to protect their privacy, but you'll see it's really simple. It's just kind of checking a box to add them in. And once your invites are sent, this is what it'll look like. So you can see, for example, people who couldn't make it versus people who could. For our wedding, we used both a combination of a multiple choice question and a short answer question. So we used the premium multiple choice option. So you can see what it looks like when you use that function versus a short answer. And then if you go ahead and click on questions, you can see, there you go, you can see what it looks like when somebody indicates, for example, that they have an intolerance or an allergy. And if you do use the short answer function for the food options, that's what it'll look like. It'll be in that format too. You can also send out broadcasts if you want to remind people to RSVP or to remind them of the event. It's really, really simple since they already have all of your contact information for all your guests, so they can just kind of send that out in one brief message. So super, super simple. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much. If you've made it this far, wow, thank you, truly. I really appreciate it. I would love it if you liked this video. If you liked it, leave a comment, subscribe. There's much more wedding content coming your way, also more DIY crafts. I would love it if you'd stick around. Again, thank you so much, and see you in the next one.